Have you ever felt like you were being pushed or pulled by forces you couldn't quite see, let alone understand? Well, today we're diving into those hidden currents. We're going to map the unseen world of the human psyche. And we're not just going to use abstract theory. We're going to look at it through the lens of a modern, incredibly high-stakes story that shows just how these ancient forces are shaping our lives right now.
So let's meet John Kiriakou. He's a former CIA counterterrorism officer whose entire job was hunting down terrorists. I mean, can you even imagine the psychological weight of that life? The constant danger, the complex web of fake identities you have to maintain, the sheer burden of making life or death decisions. The pressure, as he says right here, was otherworldly.
And that really makes you wonder, right? In a life that is pushed to the absolute limit, what invisible psychological forces are really at play? To even begin to find the answers, we need a map. And for that, we're turning to one of the greatest explorers of the inner world there ever was, the psychologist Carl Jung.
Jung was basically a cartographer of the mind. He didn't just see a chaotic mess of random thoughts and feelings inside of us. No, he saw a structured territory with these deep, ancient foundations that connect every single one of us. He literally drew a map of these unseen psychological landscapes.
Okay, so Jung's map starts with a really crucial distinction. Right near the surface, you have what he called the personal unconscious. You can think of it like your own private hidden archive, all the forgotten memories, the repressed experiences that are totally unique to you. But if you go deeper, way beneath that, Jung found something he called the collective unconscious. Now, this isn't personal at all, it's universal. It's like a shared psychic inheritance, a foundational operating system that connects all of humanity, across time and culture.
So what lives down there in this collective world? Jung called them archetypes. Think of them as the original blueprints for human experience. They're these universal characters and symbols that we all instantly recognize. The hero, the mother, the trickster. They show up in our myths, our religions, our dreams, and they quietly shape how we see the world.
Okay, I know this might be sounding a little bit abstract, right? But these inner figures aren't just concepts in a book. They show up in the real world, and often in incredibly powerful ways. So let's connect this map right back to the high-stakes world of counterterrorism and see how these things come to life. So, the very first archetype we all encounter is the persona. It's the social mask we wear. It's that curated version of ourselves we present at work, or with a new group of friends, or, let's be honest, all over social media. It's not necessarily fake, but it's the role we play to navigate the social world. It's our public face.
Now, for John Kiriakou, the persona wasn't just some social convenience, it was a literal tool for survival. He had to build a completely believable cover story, a mask that let him operate in extremely dangerous places without anyone knowing who he really was. His persona was a shield. It was a professional necessity just to stay alive.
But then there's a much more difficult archetype to deal with, the shadow. The shadow is everything we refuse to see in ourselves. It's our dark side. All those parts of our personality that we repress and deny even exist. And because we can't bear to look it in ourselves, we do something very human. We project it onto other people, especially our enemies.
Kiriakou had a literal, absolutely terrifying confrontation with his shadow. When a terrorist group tried to assassinate one of his colleagues, their manifesto named him the big spy and a war criminal. In that moment, he was forced to see himself exactly as his enemies saw him, to confront the version of himself that, in their world, was the villain. The shadow was no longer some abstract idea, it was staring right back at him.
This kind of confrontation, this deep dive into the darker parts of our own psyche, it isn't just for spies. It's actually a profound and universal journey. In fact, it's a journey that Carl Jung himself was forced to take during a period of intense personal crisis in his own life.
This timeline really shows how Jung's entire world came undone. It all started in 1912 with a really painful professional break from his mentor, Sigmund Freud. By the next year, he was thrown into a total crisis, flooded with these overwhelming visions. But, and this is the amazing part, instead of running from it, he made the courageous choice to deliberately confront his own unconscious. This terrifying period led to his most personal and visionary work, the Red Book.
I mean, just think about the incredible risk he was taking here. As a psychiatrist, Jung knew better than anyone that what he was experiencing could be diagnosed as complete madness. He was genuinely afraid of losing control, of being totally consumed by the very fantasies he studied in his patients. But he knew, somehow, that it was the only way forward. And what's so fascinating is that Jung's personal crisis perfectly mirrors this ancient, universal pattern that you find in shamanic traditions all over the world. It starts with the call, some kind of crisis that just shatters your old reality. That's followed by the initiation, which is like a symbolic death of the person you used to be. And finally, it ends in the rebirth, the emergence of a new, more whole, more expanded self. Jung was walking a path that humans have walked for millennia.
So what's the whole point of this incredibly difficult journey? Jung called it individuation. It's this lifelong process of bringing the conscious and the unconscious parts of yourself into balance. It's about integrating your persona and your shadow to become a whole, unified person. Really, it's the journey of becoming who you were always meant to be.
So how does this map apply to us? Because this journey, it isn't just for pioneering psychologists or CIA officers operating in the shadows. It is a map for anyone who wants to understand the deeper currents running through their own life. It's about finding that treasure that lies within your own inner world.
So here it is, the map, in its simplest form. First, you've got to recognize your persona, the mask you show the world. Next, and this is the hard part, you have to find the courage to acknowledge your shadow, those parts of yourself you'd rather hide. Then, you can start to see the collective unconscious, all the universal myths and stories that connect every one of us. And finally, you embrace all of this as your own unique journey of individuation.
I'm going to leave you with one final, really powerful idea from Jung. He believed that when we finally step through that door and confront our shadow, we realize we aren't entirely in control. We're influenced by these unseen factors, what we might call our patterns or our programming. So the question for you to really think about is this: what are the unseen factors pulling the strings in your life?